So to start with, I want to just stop the sharing for a second because I have a few questions for you guys. So please raise your hand, virtual hand. If you or your friends or family members who have some disabilities. And keep the hand there. And raise your hand if you have family members who are older than 60 or younger than 6 years old. And last question. So raise your hand if you or your friends or family members who got injured before or now. Great. That's actually, it's sad, but it's the majority of us. So if you actually raise your hand, and I'm not covering all the questions, actually, it means the context of inclusive design is not a distant topic for you. So now we can can lower your hands and we can continue with the lecture. So all the three subjects I just mentioned, right? The ones that have temporary or permanent disabilities, the age, the younger one, the older one, or even the, like I said, the temporarily injured one, etc. Even there are designs for minorities, for gender differences. These are all within the topic of inclusive design, at least in the context of our class. So I'll continue the lecture. So today we are going to talk about inclusive design. So the scope, the user group, the context of inclusive design, and also some examples. And I try to pick the examples that are related to morphing materials as much as I can. So in terms of the definition of inclusive design, and again, it's derived heavily from industry, actually. So for example, Microsoft has a very comprehensive website talk about inclusive design. It's a method to them that enables and draw on the full range of human diversity. So this means including and learning from people with a range of perspectives. And similarly, this is also another very renowned institute in this topic. So they talk about design that considers the full range of human diversity with respect to ability, language, culture, gender, age, and other forms of human differences. So, and again, so they're from the same research center, they talk about there are three critical aspects when you think about the execution of inclusive design. So first of all is the designers, basically us, to recognize the diversity and uniqueness when we think about designing for a specific context. And second is we use inclusive processes. This is a little bit tricky in our class context because truly inclusive processes could take a lot of time, and we still wanted to put more of a morphing matter design tool side of perspective into the course schedule. But still, just to mention that inclusive process means you actually talk to the people, try to understand their needs. There are a variety of methodologies allow you to do so. If you come from, for example, a human-centered design background, you perhaps knows that there's participatory design, there's in-depth interview, and there's even kind of a journey map you can analyze of your target user. So the assumption is that you don't necessarily know the full picture, because a lot of us are just kind of based on our own experience to design for the world. But again, that's why I asked you guys the question. So if you think a little, you will have a hard time to do inclusive design. That's likely not the case, because you have your friends, your family member, yourself experience. These are that kind of situations that's related to inclusive design. And for this course sake, you could even just design for your grandma, for example. And the last case is the broader beneficial impact. So the idea is even you design for example, a blind people, that could become what it come out from the design process could become more generalizable for just the blind. So it's part of the accessibility. So who? So we talked a lot about it already. And we are talking about the differences in race, in age, in gender, in sexual orientations, in prosperity, and also in even body sizes. I was just checking the inclusive design, the inclusive communities within Amazon. So they actually have a very special organization just focus on the people who have different body sizes. So some of those categories I put here were actually inspired by the class project from the last time. So for example, one group is working on basically a size and also shape changing belly. So it was for the dad to wear. So for them to experience the pregnancy of their wives. So that is part of the inclusive design, but also it's kind of, we call it empathetic interface. So the idea is to experience the pain, but also the excitement as the baby grows in the belly. So if you want me to, for example, assign that into this taxonomy, I would say that is looking at the difference in the maybe in the gender, but we can also say this is looking into the situational mismatch. That means the wife only at a certain period of time will experience this very special situation, and we're designing for that. This comes to a very, very important concept. And again, in my study, when I prepared the lecture slides, more than almost all the inclusive design books and lectures talk about this concept. So it's very important for us to recognize disability is a mismatch. Disability is framed as a mismatch between the needs of the individual and the design of the product, system, or services. And in this framing, so disability can be experienced by anyone excluded by the design. This is a little bit different, right? So in 1980s, disability is a personal attribute for the blind, for the handicapped. But today, disability is context driven. So for example, I could be very disabled when I'm trying to reach out an object that's really tall hanging up there because I'm short. So in this context, I am disabled. And I could, feel very disabled because I can't swim, but now I'm in water, but other people, if they can swim, they are not disabled. So again, it becomes really just the notion of mismatch. In our class, we will keep using the term mismatch when we ask you to find the context for a certain type of morphing matter. So again, we've already mentioned this disability that's not equal to per person health condition. Disability is just a mismatch between the human and also the interfaces. And this already mentioned as well, right? Everyone could possibly encounter mismatch. So for example, as you are growing older and older, you could gain or lose abilities over the course of the lifetime. So in that sense, why we cares about inclusive design, of course, we want the world to be a better place. But on the other hand, you're also designing for yourself. If, for example, you're designing for a kid, you could imagine that could be your design for the future of your own kids. Or if you're designing for the elderly, you care about the growing age groups in the world, you could be thinking about your own future as well at the same time. So this is also a very important figure in a sense. It's not gonna be included in the exam, but it helps you to brainstorm what inclusive context or people you can design for. So because again, it sort of trying to find the very fine resolution of mismatches. So the idea is there are permanent, but also temporal and situational mismatch. So again, we talk about the blind, the deaf, right? Or the non-verbal and the handicapped. Those are considered permanent mismatch. But what about temporal? What about you got the arm injured? So these are actually the middle column, and there's also another one called situational. And remember the class project you mentioned about the shape-changing belly for mom, for the future moms. So that is actually kind of a situational, right? A situational mismatch. That would be the most right column. And if you think about the distracted driver who can't see in front, that is also a situational. So again, the vertical axis is about our senses, 5 senses, and the horizontal ones are about temporal, honestly, whether it's personal or situationally related or it's more temporal thing. So, and more about the context, this is related. When you think about, again, a design, hopefully make a difference in the world of inclusive design, you could also think about the activity where where this morphing matter, for example, could contribute to better design. That could be things you wear. Remember our first lecture right after mine is about morphing fabric. It could be about things you eat, but not only eating, right? You can design for a farmer that is farming, but this whole experience of getting us full, I guess. So think about the farm, the cooking, the eating, the transportation of the food, and think about the living conditions. If you're an architect, this might be more related to you. It ranges from the design of the house, but also everything inside the house. What does it mean if we're talking about an inclusive couch? So I had this argument with the friends who design office chairs. So they had very comprehensive criteria to make office chair inclusive. Sorry, to make an office chair functional. Multiple adjustment handles and the size and the cushioning, everything. But it turns out none of the office chair fit for me. Even the one I'm sitting on, Iron chair, is one of the most expensive and famous office chairs. It's still too big for me. So to me, that is not inclusive. So inclusive office chair means you know, a chair that has the right size, the right form factor and everything for everyone. For the shorter one, little one, older one, the pregnant ones, you know, the oversized ones, etc. And if you want me to think about a morphing matter way of think about it, maybe just one chair, but depends on who are sitting on it. The chair can change size and stiffness and even the angles, etc. So that would be a perfect example of how morphing matter can contribute to the idea of inclusive design in the context of living. So again, so you can think more, and again, the slides are available online. You can always come back to this if you started to brainstorm some design ideas and run out. You can think about the mobility, right? And the social aspects. What about when you're hanging out with the friends? How to make it an inclusive experience for everyone? And think about the safety, the learning. Learning is very important. There are a lot of researchers are trying to get better handle on learning sciences, create more inclusive learning environment for college, but also for the STEM education in the K-12 context. So if your point is you want to design the learning toolkits that are not only robots, because maybe only boys love robots with beers and things. You want to design the toolkits that incorporate the concept of, for example, robotics, programming, but for girls. So that is also considered a good example. And again, health, no doubt, right? And also how to make people healthy. We are talking about mental health and also physical health in a sense. More about it, you could also brainstorm about possible conditions your designs are situated in. You think about the different weather condition or different the time of day could induce different design problems. If you want to design, let's say, if you want to design a thing that doesn't work in the night, but only work in the day, and you claim it is inclusive and helpful for the people all through different phases of life and day, that might not work. Again, I am a little bit running out of ideas for now, but again, so think about the use cases under different sort of conditions. That's also a very important criteria. And also think about the physical context, right? So are you designing something for home, or when you are traveling in the wild or in the city? So this in a library, and social context. And again, we've already mentioned that this is really important if you're designing it for just for yourself when you're alone, or you have coworkers, you're in a lab, you have lab mates in a classroom with a bunch of people sitting besides you, or with friends or family in a crowd. So we will again and again repeat this topic. So whenever we remember, for each lab session, we have an idea bank by the end. So that is a moment when we want you guys to brainstorm a little bit from the lab techniques you learned, and you think about a possible inclusive design that basically describes who you're designing for, what the mismatch that person has, and also when, where, and with whom. And for the previous few slides, we're pretty much discussing, right, the idea of when, where, and with whom. Okay, so to move on with some concrete examples. So this, when I prepare the lecture, the first example I could think of is Professor Hugh Herr. So he was from Media Lab, was a former mentor, and he himself lost his leg on a trip, hiking trip. And he started to engineer his own legs. But the part that I felt the most inspired was the fact he could climb again and climb again better and more effectively, because now he can customize the prosthetic legs. If he's go on a snow, right, this pokey leg, and if he goes on a super smooth and steep mountain range, he would make a really sharp tip in his leg. And he started to talk about this concept, human 2.0. The ability, the artificial part of the body is malleable, be able to take on any form, any function. And machines attached to our body are making us stronger and faster. So when we think about prosthetics, how do we think about functions that are more towards augmentation? That is not only to kind of assist or rehab, but also to augment. That is the concept he is focusing on, and he not only built powerful Superman augmentations for himself, but also for others. For example, for the elderly, if you can wear a prosthetic that can help you basically save your effort when you walk. And he also designed a dancing leg that is specialized in rhythms and speed for Adrienne, who lost her leg during the Boston Marathon bomb. So these are all very good practice of inclusive design. And I really can't stop myself from just literally copy and paste one of his lecture abstracts, because I think these are really inspiring words. I would read it. Society is at the threshold of a new age when machines will no longer be separate, lifeless mechanisms, but will instead be intimate extensions of the human body. Such a merging of body and machine will not only improve the quality of life for disabled people, but will allow person with normal physiologies to experience augmented capability, cognitively, emotionally, and physically. Professor Hugh Herr of MIT Media Lab described Human 2.0, an era where technology will merge with our body and our mind to forever change our concept of human capability. So this to me is really inclusive design. And in a TED talk he gave, he mentioned this shocking fact. So it is not well appreciated, but over the half of the world's population suffer from some form of cognitive, emotional, sensory, or motor conditions. So that means if our class right now has 36 students and instructors, yeah, 18 of us has suffered from some form of disability. So talking about, again, so from rehab to human augmentation with morphing matter. So this is one products I found online, I think speaks to a little bit of those kind of cognitive health, mental health aspect. It's a breathing pillow you can hug. So it will change the temperature, color, sound, vibration mode, and also their later product, even the shape, to assist you with sleeping. And this is another example from our own lab. These are basically a toolkit allow people to design stretchable bandages that can sense and monitor some of the health condition or behaviors of the wearer. So for example, you have this necklace you can attach to the neck. So when you eat different kinds of food, there are different acoustic signal. So you can monitor whether you're eating a healthy potato chips or just some junk food like healthy apple or just junk food like chips. So these, I also consider them as inclusive design because again, this to do with the behavior monitoring. What about you are designing this necklace for for example, oversized person who are interested in losing weight, with acoustic signal sensing, some data classification, and also this intimate and fashionable wearable. You could help people to monitor their own eating behavior. So this is considered inclusive design. So this is not morphing matter, but this is matter. It is a platform IKEA initiated to augment their own product and make them more inclusive. So for example, designing different attachment to allow better gripping, easier pulling, or ensure safety for children to use their product. And on the same platform, they also talk about designing for accessibility. Again, just augmentation, physical, static augmentations to their existing product.
Hi, I'm Eldel, 32 years old. Although I have cerebral palsy, I do everything I can to conduct myself like everyone else. But in my own home, of all places, I'm surrounded with furniture crying out, cripple. I'd like to sit on a regular sofa without being afraid I won't be able to get up, to open a regular closet, or even to turn on a regular lamp.
1 in every 10 people in Israel.
Okay, I'll stop here. And if you're interested, it's a very beautiful website, has a lot of very considerate design.
Hi, I'm Eldel, 32 years old.
Watching this, it made me wonder how morphing matter can help. If all the physical augmentations are indeed adaptive by itself, can we do even more interesting and helpful things? And apologize, I don't know why this video is unavailable, but so the example is supposed to be a inflatable vehicle, yes, what you call it, those motorcycles, but you can deflate them. It's like an inflatable bed. When you deflate them, they can quickly wrap and packed, and then you can go on a trip, and then you can inflate again, and it's very robust. They actually travel quite fast. And this is definitely a type of morphing matter that augment your mobility. And these are some of the project prototypes I did with the collaborators when I was still a student. And I call it also part of a assistive wearable pool because, yeah, let's just play the video. So it's a shoelace. When you, it's a jammable shoelace. So the idea of jamming is it changes stiffness if you change the air pressure inside the bladder.
Yeah. Can you like try to like, oops, left and right. I mean, the thing is that it actually is a bit too big for me. Yeah.
I'll jam it. Yeah, at a certain point, we'll describe this technology in a little bit more detail. This was a quick test we did over actually the prototyping shop in New Balance. There was just half an hour drive from MIT campus to New Balance. And the shoe designers there helped us to put the shoe together. But we came out with the technology to design the shoelace part. So what about, it's for folks who have some difficulty to actually tie their own shoelace. That could be children. It could be temporary injury in your wrist, for example, or this could be an interesting product for that. And we later also leveraged the same material for more dramatic morphing. Can I play that? Okay, I was trying to play the second video, but it's not working. That's okay. But that one, actually the whole strap wrap around the feet and form a shoe. So I also consider food and eating as a good context for inclusive design. For the noodle I'm playing the video for, if you put in water for a shorter time, it's long and flat. And if you leave it in water for a little bit longer time, it's self-chop into smaller pieces and wrap up into like a little cylinder. So you can imagine cook for your whole family, but within one pot. Maybe longer noodles for yourself for the right texture, but shorter ones for your children or for your grandma, because it's easier to bite, easier to digest, and it also carries different texture. So in this case, you are saving energy because you're just cooking once. You choose one product to start with, but then you are augmenting and diversifying the flavors and also the accessibility of the food. This goes to a bit of the kind of a morphing food context we discussed earlier. And this is also inclusive. Remember, we talk about designing for different situations, for different people. So one use cases of those morphing pasta is for astronauts. So when they are in space, we actually did some interview. A few astronauts mentioned when they stayed in the space station for long, they really crave Earth-like food. So those flat pasta, right, if you can pack them, it really saves the packaging space, but also it gave you different textures when you cook them. So this could be a good design for them, but also for disaster sites, for example, or for people who really enjoy the experiences of seeing the food morphs. So this is just a quick video to show the food when you dip them in water. From flat, they can turn into 3D shapes that are pretty designed. We'll talk more about this technique and likely run a lab session on this later on. So all you guys can host a magical cooking food party at home. Okay, so there's another idea that has been thrown around in the lab is to design for using morphing matter to design a bra, or if you will, a breast prosthesis for the breast cancer survivors. So in this case, you can 3D scan the body. You can also use an inverse design pipeline to generate flat disc that can morph by heat triggering into a breast. So in this case, they are breathable, they hold the form, and also it could be fashionable if people want to just wear it outside. And it's still working in progress. But through this project, we actually interacted with both the cancer survivors, but also people who are thinking out of the box to help them. And lastly, remember we talk about mismatch could be situational, could be temporal. So what about you're designing for temporary injuries in the wrist? So we also think morphing matter is an interesting way to do that. So those products, they were flat to start with, and they can, by pumping in current, they can wrap around your body. They will do the customized fit because a lot of the cast you get from the hospital, first of all, it's very complicated to put on. You kind of need the doctor's help. And also it doesn't necessarily fit everyone. So in this case, it's a way to make those morphable casts more customized, more accessible. You imagine those flat disc can be easily purchased from a CVS off the shelf. Okay, I think I will stop here. And there are definitely a lot of the morphing matter examples we will continue sharing during the class. And we hope it's a little bit of inspiration for you. So there are more resources, and if you are interested in the subject, feel free to check them out. Okay, great.